Direct from our studios in Bergenfield and Rivervale, New Jersey, the Clinton Avenue Reformed Church is proud to present Moses, Stories for the Young.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to our stories of Moses. You remember when Moses was a very old man, God gave him the 10 Commandments so the people of Israel knew how to live. Those are really good commandments. Moses also led the Jewish people out of slavery. Moses also led those same people through a long, long walk through the desert into a promised land. But those are stories in the future. Do you remember how Moses started out? When he was just a little baby, to protect him from a king who was trying to kill Hebrew babies, king of Egypt, Pharaoh. His mother put him in a basket, put him in the reeds along the Nile River. And the princess, Pharaoh's daughter, saw him and pitied him. She raised him in her own place in the palace. But Moses knew he was Hebrew. He had some sympathy for the Hebrew people, even though he had grown up with Egyptians and he knew Egyptian culture very, very well. So, then we remember from last week, Moses decided to be a buddy for a Hebrew slave who was being beaten. But Moses went too far and he killed the Egyptian who was beating this Hebrew slave. And King of Egypt, Pharaoh, decided, well, when I find Moses, he's going to be in jail and he's going to be killed. Moses had to run away out of the only country he had ever known. He became an immigrant to another country. He became an alien in the land of Midian. Now, the land of Midian was out in the desert, but it had a pretty good oasis. You know what an oasis is? I told you a bit about that last week. An oasis is a pool of water with vegetation in a desert area. So anyone who would keep livestock, sheep, goats, camels, they would go to an oasis to water their animals. Now that must have been quite a job, watering animals. Because animals who live in the desert get very, very thirsty. And it's a lot of hard work picking up water. Do you remember your science class? How much does water weigh? Don't remember? Water weighs just about 7 pounds a gallon. Okay, not exactly, but that's close. About 7 pounds per gallon of water. So now, if you've got really, really big animals who drink a lot, that's a lot of water to draw and put in troughs for animals to drink. That is hard work doing that. And remember, you're out in the blazing hot sun. It's hard to work outdoors when it's really that hot. But that's the land of Midian. That's how people lived. And Moses was an immigrant, an alien in that town, because he had only lived in the land of Egypt up until then. But he had to flee. He was hunted. Now, God had already decided Moses was going to do some great things. Moses didn't know it yet. All Moses knew was that he'd spent most of his life now running for his life. Well, he was by an oasis in Midian, and he saw a group of girls who were sisters who were tending their father's flock. They were giving all the sheep water. And I already explained that's not an easy task. Can you imagine having to go into an oasis pool with a dipper and pouring out water for your sheep to drink? Now, I don't know how many sheep these ladies were caring for. I know how much water my kittens drink a day. I'm lucky I can just go to the faucet. I don't know how much a sheep drinks. I bet it's a lot if it's in a hot climate like a desert. And if you've got 40, 50, 100, 200 sheep, well, that's going to be a lot of work hauling all that water. Well, these ladies who were sisters, they were watering their sheep when these other shepherds came by. Yep, they were bullies. They saw the ladies there and they said, "Hey, why should we wait until the ladies are done feeding their sheep? We can drive them out." And so these other shepherds started attacking the ladies and pushing their sheep out of the way. Bully. Remember, we talked about that last week. When we see someone bullied, are we going to be a bystander or are we going to be a buddy? Sometimes bystanders really don't like to see the bullying, but they're afraid to get involved. Other times, bystanders are kind of, wow, this is cool watching someone get bullied as long as it's not me. Well, Moses proved last week, when he protected a Hebrew slave, that he was a buddy. So Moses took his staff. He took his big staff that he carried, and he went after those shepherds who were trying to push the ladies out of the way. He drove those shepherds off. Now, I don't know how many shepherds there were who were being bullied, but Moses must have been pretty strong if he was able to drive off those bad guys. Wow, that's pretty good. He was able to drive off those bully shepherds. And not only did he do that, but then he helped water the shepherds of the sheep, of those ladies. He said, I'll help you out. And he watered all the sheep for them. So, Moses is a pretty nice guy. Twice now he's acted to defend people who are getting bullied. Once he got a little carried away. But he's also kind and helpful to the ladies. And that's wonderful. Well, all the sheep got watered and the ladies took the sheep back home. What do you think happened next? I'm going to go sit in my chair again and tell you the rest. Those ladies said to their dad, you are not going to believe what happened. We're watering our sheep. When all of a sudden these other shepherds came up and they were pushing us out of the way, pushing our sheep out of the way. They weren't letting our sheep get any water at all. But this strange man came out of nowhere and he had his big staff. He drove those shepherds off. And he even helped us water our sheep. Well, the father of all these daughters said, well, where is this man? And the daughter said, oh, he's back in the oasis. He's back in the oasis. He drives all these shepherds off. He waters your sheep. You didn't think to invite him in? To invite him here in the house? What are you thinking, girls? I mean, he deserves at least a thank you from me. He deserves maybe at least a meal from our household. Come on. Ladies, what are you thinking? And so, he sent his daughters back to the oasis to see if they could find Moses. Guess what? They did. They found Moses. He was still at the oasis, which I can understand. In a desert, it's the only place where you can get good water. In the desert, it's the only place where you have vegetation. If I was stranded in a hot desert, I'd be near the oasis also. And so these daughters, these sisters, these ladies who were shepherds, found Moses and said, come here, my father appreciates all you did for us. Come, stay with us in our house. My father wishes to thank you. And so Moses went back. He went to their house. And Dad thanked him enormously. And Moses and the oldest daughter were kind of looking at each other saying, oh, she's cute. And she was saying, oh, wow, he is really cute. And what a hard worker and what a strong guy. And sure enough, Zipporah, the oldest daughter, and Moses, they got married. And they started the family. And now Moses, well, he still lived in Midian. No, he wasn't the same nationality as the Midianites. No, he was still an Egyptian by culture. But he was an immigrant who was welcomed in because of his hard work. He was an immigrant who settled down and started a family. But his adventures had just begun. You see, while he was in Midian, well, the Pharaoh who was seeking his life, that Pharaoh died. A new Pharaoh took over. You know what? He treated the Hebrew slaves worse than the last Pharaoh did. And all of the people who were Hebrew slaves started crying to God, 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 when are you going to do something? When are we going to be free from slavery? And the Bible tells us God heard their prayer. You know, God had a plan to do something to help those Hebrew slaves. But you know, that's the story for next week. I'm not going to tell you quite yet. Thank you for listening to these stories of Moses. And I'm going to ask you a favor. I want more kids to hear these stories. So please, if you're watching this on Facebook, please like it, make comments, share it. Tell everyone you know about these stories of Moses for the young. I'm not going to be happy until I get hundreds of kids listening to these stories. They're very important. What the Bible tells us is who we are and what God expects from us. How will we ever know who we are or how to act without hearing stories of the Bible? Please, my friends, like and share and even make comments. God bless you. I'll see you next week for another Moses story.